Well, welcome to a new Team CGC 9.8 video. Today is our completed sales and pricing video for CGC 9.8 comic books that we like to do occasionally here on the channel. I always say one of the best things you can do as a comic book collector for these 9.8 CGC 9.8 key issues is to stay on top of some of the current market prices and some of the current completed sales in the market. Then you're going to know the right price for your issue and way less chance of overpaying if you have that knowledge and information. So that's what these videos are all about. We do them about once every 2 weeks, I would say now. So I got a full list of great key issues from sort of the late 70s, 80s, 90s, all up to present, that the ones we really like to collect on the channel here. Even better, there's 4 or 5 issues, I believe, from the team. People have sent me either on Instagram or in the YouTube comments below some of their completed listings for CGC 9.8 books that they either bought or were seeing out there. So got a couple of those to get through as well. So full list here. They're all CGC 9.8 books. All the prices we talk about here in US dollars. And I'll have a list in the description below of just all the issues with the prices if you want to kind of follow along that way maybe. So, interesting book here. We'll go through the team books first, sent in by the team. First one here was sent in by Joel Walters in the comments on last week's video in the YouTube comments. He had purchased a Star Wars #1 for $926, and he had mentioned very well centered in a new case. So I would say that's a really good price, sort of in this environment too, with that movie sort of just coming out in theaters about a month ago, I guess we'll call it. Star Wars #1. White pages, nicely centered in a new case for $926. I think that's pretty good. I think Joel had a good buy there, and I was doing some completed listings on eBay here, and one had went for $982.97. So $982.97. Joel getting his for $926, and yeah, I sort of paid for mine almost a year ago now, about a little over $900 for mine as well. So I think if you can grab a Star Wars 1 for like a really good looking one in a new case, CGC 9.8 white pages for just over $900, that's not too bad right now. Maybe if you're super patient, look to get it under $900, but I've recommended this book in the past. CGC 9.8 ratio is like 7%, quite rare, still under $1,000, iconic brand too. So yeah, Star Wars #1 is one I'd recommend, one I got obviously. Next book here was sent in from Alex, who's I think Old School Comics on Instagram, and he had sent me a message on Instagram, and I forgot to put these on last week's video, so these might be about 2 or 3 weeks old, these prices. But it was for a ROM #1, really cool, like 70s book that's still pretty affordable. Certainly if you really like ROM #1's one to go after. And it's one was $259.95, and the other one went for $324.95. And he had sent me these because he mentioned, wow, like it looks like these are heating up quite often, because I think he was used to seeing them go for closer to $200. So maybe for this book, maybe look to try to get it on a deal closer to $200. But yeah, 2 have went for over $250 certainly, and 1 over $300. Yeah, $259.95, $324.95 for ROM #1 CGC 9.8 white pages. Next book here, sent in from Brett, and he grabbed a Spawn Batman one-off, a book I've recommended a lot on the channel as a sweet one to get for around $100, and mentioned that you can get it for under $100 in an auction if you're kind of really patient type of thing. And he got it in an auction for $87 on eBay, which is a really good price for pretty much like rock bottom for Spawn Batman. I mean, maybe if you get really lucky around 80, but I paid like $110, I think it was $110 for one, and then a little over $120 for another one. So yeah, really good buy by Brett there. Next one too is a book that I purchased last week. I unboxed it, the Amazing Spider-Man 316. Brett had also grabbed an Amazing Spider-Man 316 as well. So that one went for, he grabbed it for $240. And I think it was like $250 something all in shipping, he had said. So great price for that. I've sort of mentioned, if you're in the States, like I'm in Canada, so if you're in the States, you're going to have a lot more selection for that book, and you can probably get it a little under $250. I paid for mine $261. And that was like before shipping. I always do before shipping because for me, I'm always overpaying for shipping because I'm in Canada. So it's not really relatable for people in the US, so I just do before shipping prices. Usually, like, a good goal, I think, for US buyers out there, if you're watching, is to sort of get the price that I pay all in shipping, shipping included. So, like, that would, like, I paid $261 for my Amazing Spider-Man 316. If you're in the States, if you could pay, like, $245 plus $10 shipping, I think, you know, that's a really good deal for this book. Yeah, classic McFarlane Venom cover, Amazing Spider-Man 316. Yeah, one went for $240, another one for $261, and the $240 was from Brett. Last one here from the team. Saw this morning, Brian Morrissey had commented on YouTube, and he picked up a Silver Surfer 44 for $169.99. So I think two people on the team now have grabbed a Silver Surfer 44 for $169.99. And I kind of use this book as an example quite often because I paid $225 for mine during Avengers Endgame, and then I paid $155 for mine, 6 months after Avengers Endgame was out of theater, let's call it. So it gives you an idea about how those promotions for the movie can stir up some demand and the prices rise. Right now, $169.99, I think is a great price for that book. It's looks pretty good on the census for like an early 90s book, and there's only 200 and something of them out there. So this kind of stands out as one, yeah, if you can get it close to 150, you know, I think over time it'll be well on its way back up over 200. And I think it's a good one to have long term. Okay, so those are all the books from the team. Thanks so much for, staying on top of those listings and getting me some completed listings. If you want to add me on Instagram, I got the links in the description below. You can send me some completed listings that you're seeing, or maybe you purchased the CGC 9.8 book as well. And I would love to kind of get some more prices from the team. Next issue here, saw in my research this morning, Savage She-Hulk had sold in the CGC 9.8 white pages for $379.95. So it was interesting to see this one because this is one we documented when the announcement came out that there's going to be a She-Hulk Disney Plus series, I believe it was. A lot of these had sold like that week for about $550, and I think a couple were $575 too. And I mentioned, wow, like that really shot up, and there were a lot that had sold at that time. So let's call it now. We're about 6 months later after that announcement. This issue used to go for about $350 before that whole announcement. Now one going for $379.95. So it kind of went on that roller coaster and coming back down to sort of a normal, a decent fair price for this book. Around $350 if you like She-Hulk, and $379.95 this one went for. I think that's a decent price. Like if you like She-Hulk and maybe you're nostalgic for that book, you want that book, that's a decent price. Next one here was Incredible Hulk $271, really cool one. First Rocket Raccoon in comic books. Certainly one that really exploded off Guardians of the Galaxy's movies coming out now, probably over like 5 years ago. That first one came out. But saw one of these go in the CGC 9.8 white pages new case for $539.95. And yeah, pretty good price for that book. I think for that age of a book, it's really a really good first appearance to grab. And Incredible Hulk books are always very collectible. So yeah, one of the key issues from Incredible Hulk $271, First Rocket Raccoon for $539.95. Next book is a hot book right now, modern book, Young Avengers #1. Like tons of chatter for, I don't know if it's a Disney Plus series or I'm not too on top of like what's going on with the immediate announcements and the gossip, but lots of speculation about Young Avengers sort of being in the MCU possibly. Two of these had sold, saw them both sell for the same price. It was $269.95. And just, in the last 6 months here, I've documented a lot of these that have sold for $250 in the CGC 9.8. And, I had sort of at that time recommended, try to get it closer to 200. Like, it's such a new book. Like, there are a lot of great, first appearances in there. Obviously, you get the whole kind of Young Avengers, but it is a good book, a good modern book to get. But whenever you get over $250 for a modern book, makes me kind of think twice. That you might want to hold off until it cools down a bit and pay closer to 200. I think maybe $225 could be a really good price to aim for Young Avengers #1 CGC 9.8 white pages. Next book is a really cool one that you don't see too often here. G.I. Joe number 26. It's the origin of Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow. Saw it sell for $449.95 in the CGC 9.8 white pages, and it was in an old case too. But a very good looking copy in an old case, very well centered. So if you're kind of buying the book and not the case, it was a really pristine looking book. And yeah, these G.I. Joe books are, especially some of the keys. So this book and G.I. Joe 21 are kind of like the two, like that. The 21 is the silent issue, which is the big key. And then this is probably the second biggest key out of the whole G.I. Joe series. Origin of Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow for $449.99. I think that's actually a pretty great buy. I think an investment grade book. And yeah, there's a cult following for those G.I. Joe books, those 80s G.I. Joe books. I really like them too, to be honest. Next book, Spider-Man 2099, number 1. Cool, like 90s modern book that there's a lot of out there, and seems like a lot of people kind of like this book. It won in the CGC 9.8 in an auction, went for $53. And that's pretty rock bottom on this book, like around between $50 and $55 is a really good deal for this book in the CGC 9.8 if you like it. I saw an Eternals number 1 sell, and obviously this movie's coming out. I've seen them sell higher for this too, sort of in that immediate buzz that it generated when everyone sort of knew that there was going to be an Eternals movie. But last week in the research, I saw one sell for $945 in the CGC 9.8 white pages. And, you know, Eternals number 1, this is going to be interesting to see how the movie does. You know, it's a Jack Kirby, created story and book. Like, it is a pretty classic Marvel series, but not very one right now that I think really has an iconic brand or anything. But, will the movie really catch on? And then, this book could just be the beginning for this book being, still under $1,000 for a CGC 9.8 for a 1970-something book is not too bad. But I had mentioned in other videos, I think there's a chance here where that, maybe they come out with 1 or 2 Eternals movies and maybe they don't do really, really well, and then Eternals is just, into the abyss forever pretty much. Because again, I don't really think it's an iconic sort of team or name within the Marvel Comics. But yeah, if it catches on, this could be a decent buy at under $1,000, $945 for a CGC 9.8 Eternals 1. First appearance and origin of the Eternals. Next book, Uncanny X-Men 221. First appearance of Mr. Sinister. Kind of covered this on the last couple videos. Talking about maybe kind of speculating even Mr. Sinister becoming the next MCU villain, possibly. Kind of cool to see this one. Interesting to see the prices on this one. 2 of them sold for $199.99, so $200 for Uncanny X-Men 221, first Mr. Sinister. I had a couple people on the team message me on Instagram. I think someone got one for like $165 in the last month or 2 here. And I obviously mentioned in our ice cold CGC 9.8 list video that this book had come under $200, and I thought it was a really good buy, around like $175 or whatever, anywhere under 2. But 2 of them going last week for about, $199.99, let's call it $200 for 2 of them. Maybe perking back up over $200 for that issue already. And, there does seem to be some evidence, I think, that the lull that had happened in November and December of last year, and maybe even getting into this year, is starting to not be a lull anymore, and the prices are kind of heating up. I know Ultimate Fallout number 4, which, that's, again, down a couple books on the list, so we'll save it for that, I guess. I saw Batman Harley Quinn sell, and brought mine out here. And I mentioned when I grabbed mine, it was for $290 with really cheap shipping in Canada, like one of the cheapest shipping prices to Canada I ever got, because the guy really wanted to get rid of it. I could tell he needed the cash. Bought it for $290. Saw one last week sell for $334.50, and I believe it was in an auction too, $334.50. And had sort of mentioned when I purchased this for $290, that's at the lower end of a fair market value. Like, I thought it was a really good deal for $290. And yeah, right now, obviously, Birds of Prey's in theater, so I would say $334.50 is a pretty full price for this book in this environment, because there's going to be a little bit of hype and demand generated from Birds of Prey. So, maybe wait 6 months and try to get it just under $300. I think would be a really great price for this book. as we mentioned, Ultimate Fallout 4, I was talking about some evidence where the market could be heating up a little bit. Obviously we just did that 7 ice cold CGC 9.8 books for great prices. So Ultimate Fallout 4, on last week's pricing video, one had one for $400 and one had one for $427. And last week saw one go for $400. And I picked up mine maybe a month or two ago now. I think probably 2 months ago now, for $354, I believe it was. Mentioning at that time that this book had never went under $400 very much, and that I think that you want to buy the lull kind of in it, buy the correction, which I did. I ended up picking up one copy. But some evidence here, I think, with in the last 2-3 weeks here of this book going for over $400 now, for 2 or 3 weeks, some evidence that the market's coming back. And even another book I talked about on that cold video, Amazing Spider-Man 252, a lot of people were getting back at me, like some of those completed listings now are really popping up over 400 again. So yeah, these kind of the lull in the correction, you don't want to say that the prices are bouncing back for sure right now, 100%, but it looked like those prices were very attractive during that lull, and it was a decent opportunity to buy. Ultimate Fallout number 4, around $400 now. That's what it sold for last week. Decent price. I think I'm interested in waiting for maybe a couple more lulls in the summer before like an Into the Spider-Verse type movie comes out, or before any of the Venom trailer drops or anything like that. Kind of looking for a lull to maybe add another Ultimate Fallout number 4 in the first print. First appearance of Miles Morales. Next book I saw, a really nice one, a New Teen Titans number 2. First appearance of Deathstroke, the Terminator. Very popular DC character. This one was a newsstand version, and it was very nicely centered, like a really pristine copy, newsstand, in a new case, in an auction. So if you wanted this book, this would have been like the auction to see. $512.55 this book went for. Yeah, first appearance of Deathstroke, the Terminator. What was it? New Teen Titans number 2. Documented a Spawn number 1 newsstand that sold last week in the CGC 9.8. Final price for that, $387.29. I bid on this book, but it got outbid. This was interesting. It was a book in Canada, in Ontario, so I had to pay, there was taxes added on to it. So I wanted to put in a bid, but I almost knew 100% that I was going to get outbid because I had to factor in taxes, and it just ended up being too expensive. I couldn't be competitive with the bid, but this is a book that I had on my want list video. I want another one. I do have one in the Spawn newsstand, CGC 9.8. I want another one. I'd like to have 2 of that. $387.29 is what one went for. I paid $375 for mine, plus like 17 something shipping to Canada, I think it was. So got it here for less than $400. So yeah, pretty happy with my price. That one being in an auction, a Canadian auction too. So I bet if that came out in an American auction, it would have reached over $400. Because some American buyers are kind of skittish of bringing books from Canada to the US over the border, which I can understand. So yeah, that book probably would have went for over $400 actually if it was an American auction from like a good seller kind of thing. Next book, Secret Wars number 8, I saw $218.38. Saw one sell. Origin of the black costume symbiote that becomes Venom. Secret Wars number 8, $218.38. I think that was a pretty good, that's a pretty decent price. I've had, people on the team have sort of told me in the past that they've grabbed this book for $200, plus shipping, I guess. So, maybe call it $210 all in, $215 all in. So $218 plus shipping, a pretty great price. I mean, you wait around a little bit longer to save $10. I was looking at this one, watching this one, thought about bidding, really nice colors on it, wasn't perfectly centered. So it wasn't like the perfect Secret Wars number 8. There's a lot of those out there. There's so many of them out there, and it's not so too rare on the census. Like, I'd much rather go after an Amazing Spider-Man 252. Personally, I would if you maybe had to choose, like, I would almost not want to spend over $200 on that book. I would rather take that $200 and put it towards another Amazing Spider-Man 252. Which I just think is kind of a really iconic cover, and it's a lot more rare on the census. Next book here is a Batman 457. So it's a 1990s book. You'll probably know it you'd recognize it with a Scarecrow cover. It's the first cameo appearance of Tim Drake Robin. It's got a cool kind of cameo, a pinup of the Tim Drake Robin. Batman 457. This book was a CBCS 9.8, and it was a newsstand. So these early 90s books, the newsstands are pretty elusive, actually, in 1990. Batman 457 in a newsstand. CBCS 9.8, not a CGC, went for $75.99. And actually, I ended up picking up this book, and this was one I purchased. And yeah, I just saw it on, it was a buy it now. I'm sure if, it was obviously a CBCS 9.8. I think if it was a CGC 9.8 newsstand, it would go for more than $75.99. Or maybe, it would probably be in, I feel like an auction for like $85 to $90 that would go for. Because the newsstand, the direct editions, I wouldn't have bought this if it was a direct edition. But just a really good looking newsstand edition centered for $75.99, I thought was a fair price in the CBCS 9.8. Good pictures, looking really good on the pictures and scans, so I thought why not? I think, maybe if that was in an auction, if you'd ever see one of those in a CBCS 9.8 in an auction, maybe you get it for $10 less, but I was able to get it for that with cheap shipping to Canada, and I made sure I was getting cheap shipping. I didn't really want to overpay for shipping on this book, because I mentioned in when I recommend Batman 436, which is one I recommend, first appearance of Tim Drake, that I like that one over this one, Batman 457. I always see, there's tons of Batman 457s in Batman bins, back issue bins in, local comic shops and stuff like that. So it's one of those books, you see it a lot sometimes. So it's not my, immediate favorite, but I thought in the newsstand, a perfect looking one, nicely centered, nice colors for $75.99. I don't have this one, and you know how much I love Batman. I got probably 50 Batman CGC 9.8 keys from sort of that era, the 80s and early 90s. So $75.99, Batman 457 newsstand, CBCS 9.8. Last book is New Mutants 98 on the list. Interesting. I mentioned it in that kind of cooling off video of CGC 9.8s that for great prices that are cooling off. I said in that video, a direct version, a really good price would be about $650, and a really good price for a newsstand version would be about $750. So last week, doing the research, two had sold last week. One was $690, and the other was $735. So definitely not rock bottom prices for these, so maybe a little bit more evidence that the market's kind of perking up again, because for sure, New Mutants 98 2 months ago, I saw one go for $610 in an auction. Someone on the team had mentioned they picked up a newsstand for just over $700. I think it was $705. Newsstand version. So a $735 for a direct version one went for last week. I didn't see any newsstands last week, but $735 for a nice looking direct in a new case, and $690 for a nice looking direct in a new case. So maybe these perking up to around $700. No more screaming deals near $600 on New Mutants 98, possibly. Definitely keep an eye on that. But you know what? Interesting prices this week. I think there's some evidence that the lull in the correction that was going on in sort of November, December could have just been a seasonal thing. And I know certainly, I don't know if it matters much, but I know this year the stock market has continued to do well. So people's investments are probably still doing well, and I think that might have a little bit to do with, the market perking back up here. Because, I think, some of the books that we talked about in that cooling off video, in the ice cold CGC 9.8 videos for great prices, CGC 9.8 comics for great prices. In that video, I think some of the prices I mentioned in that might be a little bit low, might be too good of a deal, so you might want to adjust your prices if you see that, and just make sure you do your prices, because it's a sort of thing that's happening right now. That's what's great about the comic book market. It's like a free market. So I made a video yesterday or the day before, kind of from my knowledge about the past month or two of prices, but in the now the prices are changing so quick. So one of the reasons why I really like these kind of pricing videos that we do about every week or two here. That's the full list there. Full list of key issues. I saw Star Wars 1 go, that was nice. lots of classic issues. Yeah, Savage She-Hulk getting, below 400 again. And, another Silver Surfer 44 grabbed by the team. That was nice. For a fair price there, $169 for first Infinity Gauntlet. But yeah, some great key issues that we went through here. And again, I always say one of the really worst things you can do that can kind of sour you off the hobby when you're buying CGC 9.8 books is overpaying. But it's very avoidable if you just get that information, do your completed listing searches for certain issues, watch these videos, and you get a really good idea of the fair market value for all the books that you'll want after a couple months. And very low chance of overpaying at that point when you have that knowledge. So if you haven't already, I invite you to join the team and subscribe to Team CGC 9.8. Hit the bell, get all the latest notifications. Add me on Instagram and Twitter. I got all the links in the description below for all that stuff. But yeah, I love these pricing videos. I just think getting more knowledge about the prices for the CGC 9.8s is great to have that knowledge, but it's also fun. Just to kind of see, the Batman Harley Quinn going for $330, $450 in an auction. That's, with that movie being out in theater now, that's kind of an interesting thing to see, being that I think the fair value for that is closer to $300. So yeah, just those kind of little details are kind of fun to go through. But enough blabbering on. Thank you very much for watching today. Yeah, and appreciate all the support in the comments as well I'm getting. Thank you so much for all that. But I'll see you on the next video.